Okay. There was no tone, so I'll introduce myself again. My name is Karina. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen out there. Tonight, or this evening, we're going to talk about vocabulary. Okay. As myself and the intro already said, tonight's topic is vocabulary. I have structured the talk into 4 categories. The first one is why it is important to use different strategies, or why is it like, I'm not so sure about the different strategies. I think that most people have one strategy that works exceptionally well for them. And the question is, do you know which strategy is suitable for you? And that's why I will try and give you a little bit of input on how to find it out. I think, or what my own experience taught me, there's still a lot of people out there who learn the vocab the traditional way, like you have a vocabulary book and kind of German-English translations. I will try and show you some different approaches to the whole thing. You may want to find something that is more suitable for you, or at the end of the talk you find out that your way is the best one. This possibility exists as well. So first of all, I will show you why it is important. I guess for some people learning vocabulary is, as I said, a thing like translating back and forth between the languages. Why is vocabulary, or why are strategies so important? What are word fields and what is semantic mapping? They are not that different really, or at least in my understanding they are not. The lexical chunks are, and I think the lexical chunks, that's a hard word. The lexical chunks are the most interesting part because they include some concepts of the English language that are very frequently used in oral English, something that native speakers would use a lot. Lexical chunks includes phrasal verbs, for example. You may have heard about the topic, or I hope you did. So that is something that makes your English sound quite nice at the end of the day. Gives you extra points in the vocab section after the exam as well. So let's have a look at why it is important to know different tactics, or to find out what type of vocab learner you are if you don't use any different styles. There are different types of learners out there. That's what people like me study a lot at university. And well, we try to discover or work with strategies that help our future students to learn the vocab more easily. You may have talked about that in class. There is different types of learners. Some people are very visual people, so they learn best when they have an image together with a word, or are generally just quite good at remembering images. So those people are usually the ones that know where the word is in their vocab book, so they would be able to tell me, okay, it's on page 5 somewhere in the middle, kind of thing, because they remember like the letters and the way how the words was written down, like what it looked like. Doesn't necessarily mean that they know the translation, but the visual learners usually know where the word is because they can kind of remember, picture the word. Auditive people find it very easy to learn vocab as soon as they hear it. That's those people who learn a lot from watching television or listening to the news in English, stuff like that. A strategy that works quite well for me, I think. I learned a lot about vocab just by listening to it. Maybe it was not a big enrichment of the vocabulary as such, but on how to use it really, how to use it correctly. That's also one of the points in your exams that you're going to be evaluated on. So it's not just about throwing out fancy and good vocabulary, it's also about using it correctly. And I think that's what you kind of learn from listening to stuff. That's auditive people. I have heard that there are also people who record themselves or record vocabulary and then listen to it. I've never done that. Have you ever done that?
Yes.
Oh, he said yes. Okay, so there are people. He's the living proof of that. you can see the thumb, you can't see the rest of him, but you know him. Audiovisual people is kind of a mix of both, and there are there are also people who are very tactile people, so that's the people who would want to ignore him. Tactile people are people who like writing stuff down. Like me, for example, I would always copy stuff, so if I have a handout that the teacher gave me, I would probably do it in my own handwriting, because then I have a pen and paper and I have something to do, so I work with my hands. That helps me a lot, so there's people like that as well. So if you find yourself making summaries of summaries all the time, then you're probably a more tactile person, because you like the paper and you like the fact that you have a pen and that you have to do something, kind of thing. Many people are a mix. There are some hints on what type of learner you are, if you haven't figured out yet. One example is people on the telephone, for example. There are some people who, when they're on the phone, constantly draw things on notepads, or like only with the pen, no real drawings, but just the outlines of stuff. If you're such a person who always draws as a distraction kind of thing, or as a side thing next to being on the phone, then you're probably a more visual type of person, or a kinesthetic type of person, because you need to do something. So that's the people for whom writing down stuff works best, mix of visual and tactile, I guess. As I said, auditive people usually tend to remember words from what they hear. In the ideal case, they remember them as well and then look them up in case they don't know them. Which I sometimes did as well. Like if there was a word during a lecture, I was just kind of writing it down the way I thought it was spelled. Turned out wrong sometimes, got it right occasionally. And then I looked them up, which did increase my vocabulary a lot, I think, because then you have to make an effort. You have to sit down and consult a good old-fashioned paper dictionary, or you consult an online dictionary. Nowadays you can do that during the lecture as well, I suppose. I'm so old-fashioned. Yeah, so if you find yourselves in one of those categories, you probably have already figured out which type of learner you are. You still might want to give the others a try as well. Sometimes we learn, or we kind of never try new strategies. We kind of learn the way we always have, because it kind of worked out. So I suppose you could just try a different approach every now and then. One of those different approaches would be word fields. This word field is about the state of the art of my computer skills, so don't say anything bad about it. That's a fact. Sad but true. Media literacy. Media literacy is not my very strong point. If you're wondering about what media literacy is, that's, well, basically the level of how good you are on the computer and how, you know, how able you are with all those fancy new things. Well, that's my media literacy, that's state of the art. I am able to make some kind of thing and color it. So you have word fields, you know word fields, they have been, or they were in your German books already in primary school. We call them Wortfelder. So it is words that belong together. So be it derivations of a word, so you add a suffix or a prefix, making or changing a verb into a noun, for example. In my examples here, the blue box says state. So to state something is a verb. Statement would be part of the word field as well, and that's the noun. So you add a suffix in this case. So derivations are Ableitungen, so just different types of words, different Wortarten of the same thing. You can also do it with opposites, which would probably be a quite good idea if you think that your vocabulary, your Wortschatz isn't that big, because having a list of words and having to like look up the opposites in the dictionary helps you increase the vocab. Or you find synonyms, same holds true for that. This is also my example. In oral exams, we tend to use the word say a lot because it's just so easy and mainstream and common. There is different ways of saying it. There's better ways of saying it, or ways that have kind of a higher register kind of thing. To mention something, etwas erwähnen, behaupten, the one in yellow, which you can read exceptionally well, I think, is to express an opinion, for example. Very often goes in this combination as well. Let me express my opinion on topic XY, instead of saying, well, let me tell you something about my opinion, because say and tell are just, well, very high frequency. And remark, if you have a remark, eine Anmerkung, etwas anmerken. So that's synonyms for say. You could make word fields. You can also draw them, of course, which I should have done as well, judging by what I did. But I color-coded them, which I think is a great achievement for myself. Those of you who watched the stream on Monday, or you can also go back to it. No, that was last Wednesday. Well, anyway, Chris did a stream on vocabulary as well, and he explained the thing with the color codes very well. Some people color code stuff, so in their vocab book or in their vocab file, I guess nowadays you do that online, you would have all the verbs in red, all the nouns in blue, whatever, a code that works for you. Doesn't make any sense here because my examples are verbs, all of them, but I wanted to show you what I mean by color coding. So if you struggle with types of words, we sometimes do, sometimes you find it hard to find the right word out, the right type of word in the correct moment. Color coding might help, especially for those of you who are visual people, because then you kind of know, okay, well, that must have been a noun, I need a noun now. In words like poor, poverty, for example, thinking about poverty in an oral exam situation is difficult, but then if you have a color code, you know, okay, blue was the nouns, it says poverty somewhere, I need a noun, stuff like that. So that are word fields. Then we have semantic mapping, which I think is quite the same thing, or a similar thing. You have one main topic, in this case it's means of transport, for example. That is the kind of umbrella term kind of thing. You have subcategories, so you have means of transport in the air and you have means of transport on land. I found it quite hard to find means of transport in the air then, which then led me to kind of weird things. So we have the airplane as a subcategory. I just tried to find something really easy so that I can illustrate my point. So you have airplanes as the major means of air travel, and we also have zeppelins. We don't travel with them nowadays, but...
Hot air balloons.
Hot air balloons, but they're no means of transport, are they? Or would you tell someone, come on, please bring me to England in a hot air balloon? But well, yeah, you totally would, I know. Yes. So we have airplanes as the main means of transport in the air, of course. The zeppelin is made up, it's just so that you see the point.
Helicopters?
Oh.
That's a good one.
Helicopters. Okay, helicopters. Add helicopters here. You could add helicopters somewhere near to airplanes because there's a kind of same thing, like standard mainstream kind of thing. The zeppelins maybe a bit more fancy. There's a difference. There's a difference between private means of transport and public means of transport. You could make a subcategory here as well. For transport on land, we have cars, buses, the coaches, so the Reisebusse, and the metro, and several others, of course. There's trams and so on and so forth. So that is semantic mapping. You basically, I did it by hand to illustrate my point, which, well, I'm very inconsistent in the whole thing. I sometimes make it in like capital letters and, well, but it's up to you. Some people like it a lot if they have the feeling that they kind of, I don't know, created something that is decently nice to look at. Like, this is not nice to look at, but I think it hits home the point. Like, no, no. Anyway, that's semantic mapping. You have one umbrella term, means of transport, can be anything that brings you from A to B, really. Can also be the bicycle, can be walking, can be anything. It's just a means of transport in any case. Then you have subcategories, transport on land, transport up in the air, transport, I don't know, underwater. You have submarines, whatever, no idea. Anyway. You get my point. And then you have all the different words, all the different terms for it. I think that's a quite nice idea for visual people because you can also make subcategories, like more important stuff in the middle, and towards the bottom it gets less important, less frequent. I don't know.
Perhaps public hot air balloon transportation.
He is totally useless, really. Okay, he was suggesting public hot air balloon transportation. Do me the favor and don't say that in your A-level should you get the topic traffic or anything. Nobody will believe you if you say that there's hot air balloons in your area bringing you from A to B into the skiing resort or whatever, so don't. My favorite topic, definitely, I love chunks. Oh, I just realized that I misspelled the word chunks. There is a spelling mistake.
Yeah, you can just...
I can't because it's a PDF.
Then you can. Is it a PDF?
It is a PDF.
Draw.
I can't.
Yes.
The PDF doesn't let me draw anything. Oh, the PDF lets me draw something. Okay. That is pretty cool.
Media literacy.
Media literacy. Can I take a course at the university again? So I misspelled the word. My apologies for that. Chunks, you may know the word. Chunks are pieces of something. Lexical chunks are groups of words that are commonly found together, like kind of standing expression kind of thing. Units of words with two or more constituents, so it's one concept that is expressed in two or more words, not always immediately recognizable if you look at the parts in isolation. So very often lexical chunks don't make any literal sense really. If you like kind of deconstruct them and look at the words as single units, but they are very, like, the language is made up of that. Nowadays school books also have the tendency to give you lexical chunks instead of only single words, because learning words in combination kind of enables you to use them in a conversation. You hardly ever just throw single words at people, but if you learn, well, some people do, but if you learn lexical chunks, you kind of have something to start from, kind of a sentence, or at least half of a sentence, and you just well, add the bits and pieces that you need. Maybe the most common one, or one of the most common ones, is that I'm looking forward to hearing from you. Very famous because we have this famous gerund that nobody knows why it's there. I am looking forward to seeing you. I'm looking forward to hearing from you. The I am looking forward to, you are looking forward to, he, she is looking forward to, whatever. That is a lexical chunk, so it always goes together. And we kind of learn it as a standing expression. Those of you who have written a business letter or who write business letters needed for the job, whatever, you usually finish the sentence with I'm looking forward to hearing from you. I'm looking forward to receiving a reply from you. So that's a chunk. If you meet a new person or if you meet someone and you were introduced to each other and you're kind of like, pleased to meet you, that is a chunk. To be pleased by something as a word, you find something nice, you find something angenehm kind of thing. Pleased to meet you is like totally a chunk, totally a standing expression. That's something you'd probably nowadays also have in school books like that. So as an introduction, you say, pleased to meet you, or after the introduction. In a talk, let me introduce the topic of today's talk to you. That's something that you could use in your A-levels as well, if you introduce the topic. Okay, hello, my name is blah, blah, blah. Let me introduce the topic, because you always have to give a general overview kind of thing at the beginning. In my opinion, like easy stuff like that would also be a chunk, because in my opinion, we would not, maybe not immediately like pair the word opinion and the preposition in, but it is a chunk. Or do you mind if I open a window? Do you mind if I don't know, go for a cigarette, whatever. So the do you mind if, würde es dir etwas ausmachen wenn, is also a chunk, standing expression kind of thing. There is subcategories as well, which are not so important for you, I think, but I will briefly introduce them as well. Chunks are traditionally divided into three main chapters. There's collocation, phrasal verbs, and saying, idioms, and catchphrases. Collocations is things that normally go together, combinations of words that normally go together. For example, in the last example, to do the makeup. I have to do my makeup in the morning very early, and not, I don't know, I have to, well, you can say put on my makeup, but you can't say I make the makeup or something. So that's, or it's not I make the homework, but I do the homework, the classic in terms of collocations. So that's words that go together and that if separated or if replaced by another verb in this case would sound wrong. Oh, would be wrong, like to make the homework is wrong. And to make the makeup is maybe not wrong, but it sounds weird. To make do with something mit etwas auskommen is also a collocation, could also be seen as a phrasal verb, is probably like there's a lot of gray areas in between those two categories in general. Or maybe I just don't understand them, I don't know. In newspapers or magazines rather, you very frequently read the rich and famous in one like sentence. English gossip newspapers do that a lot. The rich and famous of Hollywood, the rich and famous of Los Angeles, stuff like that. So it is two adjectives that replace like a whole concept of people basically. So actors and all different types of celebrities. You know what is meant by it by reading it. You know which kind of or like who is meant or who we are talking about. So that's a collocation, a substitution of a whole concept in this case. We have phrasal verbs. I'm pretty sure you all liked them a lot when you had to learn them. Phrasal verbs is all those things like, for example, the different combinations of look, to look after, to look forward to look for, to look whatever. That is phrasal verbs, so combinations of verbs and prepositions that are kind of inseparable and that don't always, or that aren't always understandable by their literal meaning, but you would have to, they have kind of a metaphorical hidden message kind of thing. To go about a task, for example, you go about the task of studying vocabulary, go about the task of doing some research for your A-levels. To go about, sich an eine Sache, or how do I say in German? Well, you start a thing, you start doing something. Herangehen an eine Sache would probably be it. To go about it, to go about a task is that, like, the real meaning is maybe not immediately clear when only looking at the individual parts of the phrasal verb. The same, to look down on someone might make sense, like I think the literal meaning is quite clear. To look down on someone, auf jemanden hinabsehen, like you think that you are better than other people. So that's phrasal verbs, combinations of words. I think they are quite frequently used. People use phrasal verbs a lot. And like, for example, to carry out the task or to carry on with something, weitermachen, two totally different things. Both derivations from the word carry, so, but very frequently used and very useful therefore, and they give you extra points for vocab, which is important. The idioms and the sayings and the catchphrases, I find them quite dangerous because, I don't know, being in an exam situation and throwing out an idiom and then getting it wrong is kind of weird. Because, well, you should only use your sayings if you know how to use them and if you know in which situation to use them. Like the look for the silver lining thing was experience. A friend of mine would say, look for the silver stripe instead of silver lining in an exam situation. Changing Redewendungen and not knowing how to use them might result a bit, oh, well, might not be that good. So only use them if you really know how to use them and use them when you know that they are appropriate. But you could look up a few, there's a few very good ones in English. Look them up, write them down on your vocab sheet and then also on the sheet that you use during preparation and then see if they fit or not. So the first one's an idiom, the second one is a saying, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. You know that as one of those Instagram, Pinterest, Facebook slogans kind of thing. You would see them all the time. That's a saying rather. Do we have something like that in German? Jede Reise beginnt mit einem kleinen Schritt. Something like that. The last two examples are catchphrases, but then I don't think that they are really useful for your purposes. Catchphrases are sentences that famous people said and that have kind of gone into like standard language or made their way into standard language. Eat my shorts, for those of you who like The Simpsons, you will have heard that Bart Simpson said that. Is like nowadays you get T-shirts saying that, like those T-shirts are very fashionable at the moment anyway. In America, you see a lot of people running around with those shirts, so the Eat My Shorts thing has definitely become part of youth culture, vocab, kind of, I don't know. I love it when a plan comes together. That's one of my favorites. You guys out there are definitely too young to know who it is from a series called The A-Team. Also works in German. I think in German is still quite famous. Ich liebe es, wenn ein Plan funktioniert. I think that is something that people use in German. Also in English, I've heard that in English a lot as well. So catchphrases are utterances by people like that kind of became famous. There's the one in, I don't know. I was just trying to think about a great example that comes out of sports, but I can't think of it anymore. But anyway, I'll let you know next time if I can think of it again. So yeah, I think that was it. I personally think the lexical chunks are very, very useful. So I don't know what your vocabulary books and what your school books, textbooks kind of look like, but there's definitely collocation dictionaries out there in the world. I think there's also online versions of them. Knowing and using a few good phrasal verbs would be a quite good idea for your exam, I think. Usually there is one like standard expression for something, and a phrasal verb, for example, in to continue, to carry on. So continue is the normal verb, and to carry on is the phrasal verb, expressing the same thing, but then you can, prove that you have put some effort into your vocabulary learning. As I said, there's collocation dictionaries out there. They also give you information on the to look forward, to look after, and stuff like that, because we confuse them sometimes. Would also give you all the uses of the verb put, to put up with someone, to put into, whatever. So they work with phrasal verbs and collocations. You may want to write down a few. I think lexical chunks are a good idea and very useful. And yeah, I think that was it for tonight. We will be back on Monday with more theory on how to prepare for your exams, some more input, some more ideas on preparation of topics and vocabulary. Thank you very much and good night.